On the 1st of April, I lost my lawsuit against Billy Mitchell, and the judge has ordered me to pay $350,000 in damages. It goes without saying this is not the result I wanted or expected.
Well, guys, this one kind of hurts to make. Now, as a YouTuber, as a content creator, I try very hard to not allow myself to fall into a parasocial relationship with anybody on the internet. Because as a person who's experienced what that feels like on the content creator side of things, it's fucking weird. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever found myself in one of those situations. However, I do think that I've been guilty of watching a content creator for long enough to the point where I think that I sort of know their character maybe more than I think I should. And, well, today I think is a pretty good example of that. Hopefully not as good as an example as it seems. Now, nothing that we're going to be talking about in this video is really a hill I'm willing to die on. I don't really have, like, any super duper strong opinions on what's happened here. I have my opinions, don't get me wrong, but this video is really more just me trying to like gauge public opinion on this. I'm very curious to see what you guys think about this situation because I feel like people are very, very split. This is very polarizing, and I'm kind of just curious as to what you guys think because this is something I've personally been following pretty closely, and I don't know, I'm sort of conflicted. Now, if you haven't been following this lawsuit between Billy Mitchell and Karl Jobst, I'll try and give you the context that you need to understand it. There's a lot, I can't give you every single detail, but I'll try and give you the bare bones run through. But really, I feel like this is something that if you're gonna have a strong opinion about it, it's something that you would have been following from the beginning, or at least something that you would have heard of, because what people are upset about when it comes to this whole situation is the perception of this lawsuit and how it's sort of been curated over these last couple of years. So this might not be something that you really care about if you haven't heard of it yet, which as a YouTuber trying to get you to watch this video is probably not the best thing for me to say, but just being honest, okay? But before we begin, I want to give a shout out to today's video sponsor, AirLearn. If you've ever tried to learn a new language and ended up only really being able to remember how to introduce yourself or order a cup of coffee, you know how hard making progress with it can be. Here's how AirLearn, a language learning app, is different. It's super structured, fun, and ridiculously effective. AirLearn offers you 5 free daily lessons, so whether you're just brushing up on high school Spanish, prepping for a trip to Japan, or trying to impress your friends with your French pronunciation, you can do it on your own time. For English speakers, AirLearn offers Spanish, French, German, Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Portuguese, and Italian. And it makes it easy to learn all of these languages through interactive exercises. From grammar breakdowns to even weekly leagues to keep you motivated, it makes language learning not feel like a chore. And the whole experience is ad-free, which means no distractions. And if you're anything like me, and you took 4 years of German in high school, even took the AP test, and then proceeded to forget essentially every single word after you graduated, a fun, low-stress way to get back in the game, start remembering some stuff, might be just what you need. AirLearn is trusted worldwide by paying subscribers in over 150 countries, and with a rating of 4.7 stars in the App Store, it's clear that AirLearn is the perfect start for your language learning journey. So if you've got an upcoming trip, or if there's just a language that you've always wanted to learn, head on over to your phone's App Store or the link in the description and give AirLearn a try today. Once again, I want to thank AirLearn for sponsoring today's video, and let's get back to it. Now, the short version of this sequence of events is that a while back, a speedrunning YouTuber by the name of Apollo Legend made videos on a professional video gamer named Billy Mitchell. In these videos, Apollo Legend accused Billy Mitchell of cheating some of his video game world records. This led to a lawsuit between Billy Mitchell and Apollo Legend, and eventually the two settled. Now, unfortunately, in late 2020, Apollo Legend took his own life. These two events, however, are unrelated. They've been proven to be unrelated by Apollo Legend's family. Apollo Legend himself left a note, and he named people. Billy Mitchell was not one of the people named. There was no sort of indication whatsoever that this lawsuit had anything to do with Apollo Legend's decision. However, Karl Jobst apparently did not see it that way. Karl made a video on Billy where he insinuated pretty heavily that part of the reason that Apollo Legend made this decision was because of the terms of the settlement that he had reached with Billy. Now, to say something like that in the first place, when there's no real evidence to suggest that that's true, is a whole thing in and of itself. But where Karl fucked up exceptionally bad is that the terms of the settlement that he was talking about did not exist. Karl said that Apollo had to pay Billy a large sum of money, when in reality, no money changed hands. Now, according to Karl, the reason he believed this was because of a Reddit comment that he read, which he has admitted is pretty stupid, but I mean, come on, man. Now, in Karl's video where he kind of explains his thinking here, he says something that I don't really like. He says that when he was talking about Apollo's passing, he was just giving a sequence of events. He wasn't saying that anything caused anything, but if you listen listen to what he said, it's kind of hard to hear it any other way. He says that this large sum of money that, again, did not exist, left Apollo in debt, that made him have to get extra work, and because of Apollo's health issues, this was all too much. There's really no other way to read that other than him saying that this large sum of money that Apollo never actually had to pay was essentially the last straw. Now again, to say this in the first place, when there was no evidence to suggest this being the reason, could have gotten Karl in legal trouble already. But the fact that this quote large sum of money did not exist, it was never paid to anybody, you can have your opinions on Billy, you may not like him, but this is a textbook defamatory statement. Like, there's no way around that. To blame somebody for somebody's passing, with your reasoning being something that didn't even happen, I mean, defamation lawsuits are pretty hard to win. This one probably wasn't, which is, you know, probably why it went the way it did. Karl lost this lawsuit against Billy a couple of weeks ago, and when that hit the internet, people were kind of confused, which is what leads us to the meat of this video. I feel like I've kind of set the stage. I feel like that's all the context you need to kind of understand what we're talking about here today. People are pretty pissed off at Karl right now, not really because he lost the lawsuit, but because a couple of weeks ago, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people realized that they had no fucking clue what the lawsuit was about. This entire time, it seems like most people who have been following this lawsuit, myself included, thought that this lawsuit was about a completely different thing. Majority of the internet, it seems, thought that this lawsuit was about Karl's claims that Billy Mitchell cheated to achieve his video game world records. However, as we've talked about, this was not what the lawsuit was about at all. It was about this defamatory claim involving Apollo Legend. But nobody really seemed to know that. And the other day, Karl released a video sort of responding to this confusion. And I'm not going to go through the entire thing because it's like 40 minutes long. And again, I feel like if you have a strong opinion on this matter, you sort of know what happened here. But there are a few things that I just kind of want to get your guys' opinion on, because I like Karl. I've watched probably like 75% of his videos, but this is kind of rubbing me the wrong way, and I feel like a lot of people feel that way as well. So I'm just curious as to what you guys think. So my first question to you guys is a pretty general one. What do you think the reasoning is behind this confusion? Because if you watch Karl's video, his explanation as to how everything got out of hand and why everybody started to think that this lawsuit was about something that it wasn't is kind of all over the place. Like, you can kind of follow it, it sort of makes sense, but it seems a little bit disingenuous. Now, in a nutshell, it seems like Karl has blamed this confusion on a few things. One of them being that all the news outlets that covered this lawsuit said that this lawsuit was about cheating. Karl's explanation for this was that in Australian law, there's something called the contextual truth defense, which seems to mean if you make multiple statements about somebody, some of them true, some of them not, if the true statements overshadow the defamatory ones, which basically means that the true statements damage the person's reputation more than the defamatory ones did, then there's not really a case for defamation. And this was Karl's defense. So all of the things that he said in that video were brought into the lawsuit because Karl's argument was that these statements are true and they hurt Billy's reputation more than the defamatory statements. So the allegations of cheating were present in the lawsuit, and that's what most of the news outlets focused on. And you know what? That's probably true. Most of the people writing these news segments looked at Karl Jobst's channel, they saw all the allegations of cheating, they saw the allegations of cheating in the lawsuit, and that's what they focused on. So that's a fine explanation as to why the news outlets thought that, but what Karl doesn't really address, or I mean he kind of does, but not in a very good way, is why he never corrected it. Now, we're starting to get into like the mental gymnastic territory of the video. Okay, I'm about to start yapping, and like nothing I'm saying in this video I'm claiming is fact, but like in my head, his defense for why he didn't correct any of this makes no sense. Basically, it seems like what Karl said in his video was that he didn't want to give anything away about his defense by clarifying why all this extra stuff was being mentioned in the lawsuit. What I don't get is what Karl thought he was going to be giving away. From my understanding, Karl's defense from the beginning was that all these other things that he claimed to be true of Billy Mitchell hurt his reputation far more than the defamatory statement, and then Billy Mitchell said no, none of these statements are true, and that widened the lawsuit to include all of this stuff. He said it in his own words, I'll play it here.
And this was one of my defenses. My defense states that because I made those other claims that both hurt Billy's reputation and were true, Billy was harmed anyway, and the words he complained of didn't harm him any more than he otherwise would have been. And in response to these other claims, Billy denied them all. He denied that he was exposed for cheating, he denied that he was banned by Twin Galaxies, he denied that he abuses the legal system, and he denied that he expressed joy at the thought of Apollo Legends' death. And because he denied those extra claims, the breadth of argument during the lawsuit expanded to include those as well.
Which to me leads me to think only one thing, that Billy Mitchell's team would have known that this was Karl's plan of defense from the beginning. So what exactly would he be giving away by saying, hey guys, this lawsuit is not really about me saying that he cheated, it's about a different defamatory statement. He didn't even have to say exactly what it was. He could have just said it was about a different defamatory statement. What would he have been giving away? It doesn't make sense to me. So to me, this sounds like kind of a cop-out. Especially because Karl used these news clips in some of his videos about Billy after the lawsuit began, which to me just seems like he was trying to push this narrative that this lawsuit was about cheating. Call me crazy, but it's hard for me to believe that you would include a news clip about yourself that states something not entirely true about you and then not address it at all if you didn't want people to think that what the news clip was saying was true. You know what I mean? It just doesn't really line up. Personally, I'm sort of leaning towards the belief that Karl kind of early on realized he probably wasn't going to win this. Because I'm sorry, but this defense is shit. I can't believe a grown man would actually think this would work. And I'm not trying to be mean when I say that, but to compare making statements about somebody where you make people think that they cheated in a video game to you saying that they basically kind of pushed somebody to end their life are not comparable in the slightest. You've got to be crazy to think that. This argument that, oh, well, people already thought he was a cheater, so it's not a big deal for people to think that he made somebody end their life is fucking nuts. Come on. And I think that he probably knew that most people on the internet would be in agreement with that. Those two things are not even in the same universe. So maybe he just didn't want to tell people that that's actually what he was fighting, because I think most people would have been a lot less supportive if they knew that was the case. Another thing that Karl says a few times during this video is he claims that he did talk about what the lawsuit was about, and he's referring to this.
Billy Mitchell is referring to the YouTuber Apollo Legend, who tragically took his own life in December of 2020. I won't go into specifics about this particular point because it does relate to his ongoing lawsuit against me.
After he brings this up later on in the video, he basically says, I'm sorry if you were confused about what the lawsuit was about, but I told you right here. Which again, I think is pretty unfair. To say that something relates to the lawsuit against you is not the same as this is the entire focus of the lawsuit against me. Another thing that I'd like to get your guys' opinion on, and another thing that I think Karl kind of messed up on, was his retraction. After realizing that his statement was in fact false, he issued a retraction, but the way he did it was kind of weird. He stuck it at the end of a 30-minute long video that was completely unrelated to Billy Mitchell, and instead of retroactively being you know what, maybe that wasn't the best idea, Karl kind of defends it. Now there's been a few times where I've been so damn wrong in my YouTube career that I've felt the need to address it, and every single time that's happened, I've made a separate video for it. And these have always been for things much less serious than the statement that Karl made about Billy. For him to have had litigation threatened against him and him just be you know what, I'm just gonna put this at the end of a Dark Souls video, kinda crazy. Don't know how he thought that was a good idea. Overall, guys, I don't know. I just kind of hate that this is happening because, like I said, I liked Karl as a YouTuber. Never spoken to the guy, don't know him personally, but as a YouTuber, I liked his shit, and I feel like there's just not really a whole lot of coming back from this. Not necessarily what he did, because I think a well thought out apology, maybe apology is not the right word, but a well thought out explanation, at least, would have made this a lot better, and I've watched his entire video twice, and it's just not very good. Do I understand some of his logic, some of his reasoning? Absolutely. But I feel like half of what he said is reasonable and logical, and the other half kind of just reads like an excuse. And a lot of it is kind of contradictory, because he seems to sort of go back and forth between saying that he never misrepresented the lawsuit, he never purposefully allowed it to get out of hand, and then, for example, in reference to the news articles talking about how the lawsuit's about cheating, he was I was aware this was happening, but I wasn't going to take any attention away from it. I don't know what his game plan was. Maybe it was genuinely to try and convince a judge that since a lot of people thought he was a cheater, that this connection to Apollo Legend didn't actually affect his reputation. Maybe he actually thought that would work. But honestly, I don't know, Karl kind of struck me as a smart, intelligent dude, and, well, to be blunt, that does not seem like the thought process of a smart person. So I really feel like something else was happening here. My guess, my assumption, I think Karl honestly thought that he was going to win this lawsuit, so he kind of of like just didn't really care. Because he said something, and it's one of the few things that I do agree with in his video, and that's that if he had won this lawsuit, then people probably wouldn't have cared nearly as much, if at all, as they are now that he's lost it. So maybe he thought he would win it and this would kind of just blow over. Nobody would really care what the lawsuit was actually about, but I don't know. At the same time, I don't see how you can go into this thinking that you were going to win it. This is like textbook defamation. There was no way out of this from the beginning, and I don't know. I feel like Karl would have had to have seen that. Maybe I'm wrong though. Well guys, what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? Like I said, it's just really hard for me to buy that somebody could think that this was really going to hold up in court. Sure, hindsight's 2020. We know that it didn't hold up in court, and that might be influencing me, but I don't think it is that much. This was a crazy argument from the beginning, and I feel like it was kind of hidden for that reason. I don't know. Don't really know what to think here. I'd like to think that this is somehow just a big misunderstanding, but it doesn't really seem like that's possible. Not sure. Karl said that more information will be coming out over the next few months, so maybe there will be something that sort of changes our minds here, but don't know if I really see that happening. We'll see. See ya.